family. This next topic is personally very exciting for me, resilience and allyship during the COVID-19 pandemic. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Rupa Dachere, founder and CEO of ThriveWise. ThriveWise is a nonprofit organization dedicated to retraining and retraining tactical women talent and allies. At ThriveWise, she has been the creator of groundbreaking tactical micro conferences, safe space, and allyship training programs targeted at tactical women and allies to improve the workplace environment. With this said, please welcome Rupa Dachere.
Awesome. Thank you, Madhukar. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be at Women Transforming Technology today to share some of my thoughts on resilience and allyship during COVID. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to say that given the fact that the double and triple mutations of the COVID-19 virus are ravaging India at this time, resilience and allyship take on a whole different level and meaning. We are all handling the devastation as best as we can from afar. And I want to acknowledge the many organizations and individuals who are putting their lives on the line to help those in need. May we all be inspired and strive to be better human beings through this terrible ordeal. Here's a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about today. I'll start off with my career and personal journey, followed by some thoughts on resilience and allyship, as well as perspectives for those in the audience who are in leadership positions at their companies. After that, I'll share with you what we do at ThriveWise, our mission and programs, and wrap up with some resources and how you can engage and follow up with me. I would like to mention that the perspectives and issues that I will be talking about today are targeted towards research and development, and specifically the technical and PM ladders in R&D. Leaders as well as staff in these ladders have a very specific mindset and characteristics that, in my opinion, need a different and targeted approach. So let's get started. I wanted to share a little bit about my career and personal journey. On the left-hand side is my career, and on the right-hand side is what I was doing on a personal level. Throughout my career as an engineer, I was very often asked to step into management roles, and I always refused. I was one of those engineers, very introverted and completely focused on all things technical. However, around the mid to late 2000s, I started running into challenges with promotions, recognition, getting the good projects, and getting visibility for my work. At that time, I was well into my senior and principal levels on the technical ladder. So I started looking around rather desperately for some help from anywhere. Grace Hopper, IEEE, ACM, SWE. I couldn't find any entity that could help someone like me. Remember, this was around 2008, 2009, 11 to 12 years ago. So I was forced to step out of my comfort zone to find a way to help myself and others like me. That was how Code Chicks was started. It grew out of my own pain and frustration. And after I got exhausted ranting about my problems to all my friends and family and not getting anywhere, I thought I should do something about it. So I started working on Code Chicks on the nights and weekends with hacking sessions in my living room to build a community for very technical and dedicated women. We started off hacking on various operating systems, including different distros of Linux and Unix. So it was a very technically oriented group. I mean, kernel modules were super exciting. I want to highlight the quote in the middle because it truly reflects my choices and my life. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Some of you may know that I was the principal product manager running global engineering infrastructure at Walmart.com in 2018. after I left VMware. Everything was going swimmingly well until I took an executive education class at Berkeley in October of 2018. At the end of the class, the professor pulled me aside and said to me, "Rupa, you need to rethink your life. What you're doing at your job, they can hire someone else to do. What you're doing with Code Chicks, only you can do. So think about what impact you want to make with your life." Now, no one in my entire life had ever said anything of the sort to me. I was completely stunned. I think I mumbled something in response. I don't remember what I said. I know that I was thinking, there's no way I'm giving up my great job and compensation. So a couple of weeks later, I was driving to work and I was listening to NPR. There was a program about how to figure out what was important in life or something like that. And there was this guy who said, suppose you got hit by a bus or a truck and are lying on the street, bleeding to death. You know you're gonna die. What is your number one regret? And I realized sitting in my car that day, that for me, it was that I never really gave Code Chicks my best effort or my time or my energy. This had a huge impact on me. And long story short, 2 weeks later, I quit my very well-paying, highly respectable and impactful job to become a solopreneur with no income, no benefits, and a very questionable future, and drained almost all my savings during this transition. And oh yeah, I didn't have a spouse or a family to fall back on either. I want to share another aspect. I'm from India. And if you know anything about Indian culture, you know that when you tell your friends and family that you're quitting the best paying job of your career with the highest prospects for growth and visibility, the reaction is similar to you having jumped off a cliff or becoming a prime candidate for a mental asylum. Needless to say, my family and friends were not particularly supportive of my drastic high-risk decision. But that didn't stop me. I knew that I needed to do this for myself. If I failed, hey, at least I would have tried and given it my full effort, and that was okay with me. So what happened with Code Chicks since I started it in 2009 in my living room? I know this is a busy slide, but I wanted to show you the many stages of the journey and what it took to get to this point. Remember that I was working full-time in high-pressure jobs till 2018. So from 2009 to 2018, I ran lots of meetups. And in 2015, I started DevPulseCon, our annual conference. I also started doing safe space panels at the conference, which became a huge hit. All of this was largely funded out of my own pocket. After I quit and went full-time in 2019, we slowly started getting into the bootstrap phase with revenue. And this year in January, I was able to hire my first full-time employee. Last year, I rebranded Code Chicks to ThriveWise to expand our program portfolio. And the WISE in ThriveWise stands for Women in Science and Engineering. So what is resilience anyway? Here's a definition from Wikipedia and from an article from the Harvard Business Review. When COVID hit us last year, we were forced to quickly shift to remote work. Because of this dramatic change, the concept and dynamics of a team that has historically been built in the workplace in a face-to-face setting has been forced to reinvent itself in a remote environment. And many have failed to recreate the team ethos and emotional bonds, since it is so difficult to translate these intangibles to a remote work environment. Despite the added processes resulting in over-communication, the team spirit in most R&D teams has been depleted and replaced by burnout, something I'll talk about later. And as HBR states, COVID has decimated relationships and networks. Let's talk about allyship and what that means. Here's what Wikipedia defines as an ally. And let's talk about the subtlety that COVID and remote work brings to allyship. It's always been very hard to be an ally, but with the remote work situation, it has pretty much become non-existent. Allyship has a very strong reliance on nonverbal communication, which is difficult to comprehend over Zoom. And it's pretty much impossible to communicate intangible behavior and thought patterns over text communication tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and email. The probability of miscommunication and misinterpretation is inordinately high, especially during COVID when everyone has elevated stress levels for a variety of reasons. This leads to the desperate need for methods to bring in the emotional intelligence factors into every conversation and interaction. And that is also a difficult thing to do, since emotional intelligence is not something technical people know and practice on a daily basis or are held accountable for. This is the #1 deficiency right now with allyship during COVID, whether it's in management or at staff levels. It is particularly acute at the staff levels. Burnout. According to a LeanIn study done in March this year, women are more than twice as likely as men to be experiencing physical symptoms of severe anxiety, such as a racing heartbeat, 25% women versus 11% men. More than half, 52% of women are having sleep issues, compared to about a third, 32% of men. And women who work full-time and have partners and children are more than twice as likely as men in the same situation to feel that they have more to do than they can possibly handle. 31% women versus 13% men. And some of the reasons are anxiety over layoffs, mental health, childcare workload and responsibilities, and financial insecurity. This is Alia, a typical ThriveWise member who is a software engineer in the mid-career stage. The societal pressure is intense, particularly for women who grew up with very patriarchal societal constructs and self-assess their value on the patriarchal scale. We are all a product of the society we grew up in. No matter where we were born, whether we are immigrants or not, whether we are a particular race, whether we had the same opportunities for schooling or we chose a traditional path in life. We have fingers pointed at us from every direction. In particular, studies show that women are more critical of other women than men are. This is a huge problem and is pervasive. Training and constant reinforcing of behavior patterns and assessments and practice are the only ways to break this insidious mold. And after juggling for years, sometimes things just get unmanageable. Putting in longer hours, sacrificing her personal needs and her time to take care of herself mentally, emotionally, and physically in an effort to keep going at all costs, because there is no help for her. There is no support for her that gives her an option to realistically get help in a sustainable way over a long term. And so she finally hits the wall. She just cannot do it anymore. It's all too much. She's depressed, anxious, isolated, feels like a failure in her personal, home, and work life, and every other aspect of life. She makes the difficult choice to reboot and step out of the workforce before she goes completely mental and ends up in an asylum or something similar. Hopefully by now, she is financially self-sufficient to be able to do this for herself. I want to stress here that there are so many women who have been on this journey and don't have the relative luxury to choose to do a reboot because of financial challenges. Let us not forget that they too are feeling this way and still trying to continue because they don't really have a choice. So how is COVID making things worse? The psychological and emotional strain is grinding and constant. It takes a huge toll on the mental and physical well-being. COVID has placed massive physical restrictions on all of us. We can't go anywhere, meet the people we want to meet, or do the things we want to do. On top of this, every day brings new challenges, whether it's a new variant that's more infectious, whether the vaccines are being delivered or not, whether we can book an appointment or not, whether schools will reopen, whether the places that we used to frequent will survive or go bankrupt. And lastly, the foundational value of trust, which is the basis of almost all of society, has been decimated. It's incredibly difficult to build trust via Zoom and Slack. This is one factor that has disproportionately hit all the new employees that join an organization, since they do not have the history of face-to-face interactions and trust building with their new team. I wanted to cover some constructs specifically for leaders in this audience. This is a slide for leadership to understand the spectrum of reasons for failure. This study was published by Amy Edmondson in 2011 and is very relevant today. Each organization will need to assess their workforce and leadership's level in this spectrum. Perhaps it's multiple reasons, and the reasons are tied to organizational tiers or specific products. How many companies have instituted DEI practices that have yet to yield any measurably positive and consistent results despite years of funding and support? How many of these metrics are actually evaluated and accountable measures are taken to improve the results? These are the questions that you need to be asking as a leader. This brings me to what we do at ThriveWise. The problems and issues that I talked about so far are exactly what we at ThriveWise are trying to address. We are uniquely focused on retaining technical women in the industry, specifically in R&D, with the help of allies who are both men and women. And we base our methodology on the practices followed by open source communities, which has existed for many decades. And I want to clarify that when I say women, I mean anyone who identifies as a woman, regardless of their gender journey. So who are we? This is what our members look like. We are largely non-Caucasian. We are engineers, scientists, PMs, women in leadership, and allies. And we are focused only on the technical and PM ladders in research and development. ThriveWise has three foundational pillars: education, mentorship and sponsorship, and advocacy. I've mentioned some of our groundbreaking programs here, particularly our safe space and ally training for engineers and PMs, which we just finished piloting at a Fortune 100 company in the Bay Area with excellent results and feedback. We are looking to launch the beta for that product later this year. Let's talk a little more about allyship. This is something that, particularly on the engineering ladder, there is a lot of confusion about. Even men and women who are trying to be allies are failing and looking for help for their allyship practices, especially with respect to microaggressions. Some key points I want to stress here is that if you are trying to be an ally, think about your mindset. Have a listen and learn mindset instead of a speak and dictate mindset. This is one of the first steps to being a good ally. And of course, holding yourself and others accountable for allyship is also critical. Our ThriveWise allyship training provides you with a basic knowledge of the different gender diversity issues. And our anti-racism training provides you with a framework to build your tools to fight bias against people of African origin. I would like to introduce you to the Dachere allyship spectrum that we teach in our allyship training class for the technical and PM ladders in R&D. As I've mentioned before, allyship is hard. It takes a certain degree of altruism as well as sacrifice to be an ally. Here are the different stages of allyship. Each of us is on a journey on the spectrum, and we do a self-assessment to rate ourselves. It is not a one-time activity that follows the checkbox method of, oh, I've taken the training, so I'm now an ally. That's not how this works. If you are not practicing allyship on a daily basis and learning, evaluating, and improving your skills, just like you did when you were going through engineering school, you cannot really call yourself an ally, whether you are a man or a woman. It takes work to internalize the different aspects of allyship and lots of practice as well as perseverance to move from the left side of the spectrum to the right side. And then there's COVID. COVID brings into focus the ways that men can step up in their allyship journey, especially at home, now that we are all working from home. An ally at home is an ally at work. The skills and mindset are similar. The burnout rates for women during COVID are a direct result of a severe lack of allyship at home, especially in families with traditional patriarchal mindsets, which have been unable to absorb the shift in work and home responsibilities caused by COVID. Dual income earners with young children and elder care responsibilities have been the hardest hit in this crisis, and allyship takes on a whole different level of intensity in these scenarios. For the leaders in the audience, please take a look at how you are thinking about and assisting those in your organization who are in this particular scenario. So how can you get help? Safe spaces and ally training programs are critical for systemic changes in an organization, especially since there is no silver bullet. It requires a constant iterative approach to delivering, revising, and assessing impact in measurable ways so that change can slowly move the culture of an organization in the desired direction. And it isn't like it's a firm and absolute goal. Human behavior is never absolute, and expectations that revolve around treating culture as a definitive goal is a recipe for disappointment at all levels. A critical thing to remember is that everything takes effort and sacrifice, and a lot of funding and resources. If you're already overloaded, perhaps you need to think about what to cut out of your busy schedule, so you can dedicate some time and effort on this aspect of your career and life. Make sure you're setting realistic goals, even if they seem minuscule to you. Remember, something is better than nothing. Start small and grow. And of course, volunteer with nonprofit organizations like us and the IEEE. On that note, I want to announce our next Campfire Conversations on May 7th, where we will be discussing influence and conflict resolution. Please do sign up for this session. It's monthly, every first Friday. The link's on this slide, and it's also on our website under events. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, patience, and attention. Remember that you are not alone in your struggles and your journey, and we are here to help you in whatever way we can. And last but not the least, may the code be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupa. This was a wonderful talk, and we have a few questions which have come in. And I wanted to ask you this. You were talking about the new normal and how COVID has changed our lives. Can you share your thoughts on how companies can support their employees better, as well as what can managers do to coach or work with their employees? Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Actually, I shared a fair bit of it in my slides, but I'll reiterate. Training is extremely important, and it's not the training where you do it, a one-time and done deal. It's repeated trainings, perhaps even the same material, because it takes several hits before a human brain can absorb the material in a training session, especially if the training is about something to do with emotional intelligence or culture. These are very difficult topics and very difficult human behavioral aspects that are hard to change, take a lot of time, and take a lot of repeated effort to get the ball rolling, so to speak. So to the managers, I would highly recommend doing coaching sessions. And before you do coaching sessions, maybe take a class from a consultant who does coaching and learn how to coach. Not everybody knows how to do it, and there are very specific methodologies that you can use that might be effective for some of your employees, and for other employees you might have to use a very different tactic. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, so you have to keep tailoring your approach as needed, depending on who you're coaching and what their background is, what their personality type is, etc. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Rupa. The next question that came in is, what are the skills needed for D&I and allyship in particular?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my allyship slides, and we have a 90-minute seminar program for this, which we are expanding to a multi-week class to train people on allyship, especially men and women on the technical ladder. And so towards that, the Dachere allyship spectrum is what we start out with. So doing a self-assessment without any judgment, without any blame, without any fear that, oh, somebody's going to say something to you because you're on, the low side of the spectrum. That is, without any of the blame game, so to speak. I highly recommend that people have a very open, honest, and objective approach to allyship. Otherwise, it's just going to be a fear factor response, which is never going to work. This is something that both men and women need to feel like they are comfortable doing without having somebody yell at them, scream at them, hold it against them, for them to improve. The whole intent is to improve on the spectrum in whichever way you can, and everybody can do something about improving their allyship skills. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Rupa, for sharing that. Now, in the closing, I would like you to talk about what is the one key takeaway that people can take from this session to prevent career burnout or increase the allyship during this COVID times?
Well, it's hard to pick one, but I do want to focus on burnout, because this is so widespread. I personally have gone through it myself, so I can speak towards that. If you are feeling like you are on the edge and you are getting super close to just maybe checking into a psychiatrist or something, you are in the burnout phase. I would highly recommend you do a quick Google search, and there are many great articles on how to detect that you are in a burnout phase. Evaluate yourself, figure out if you're in that phase, and then reach out to me or to any organization that does burnout counseling. And there are a few, and I can put you in touch with some of those companies and organizations. So for burnout, everybody's burnout categories and characteristics are different. So be careful, be very vigilant, and self-assess yourself. Frequently to make sure that you are keeping things in check and that you're okay. That's what
Great. Thank you, Rupa, for a wonderful session. And we really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great session. Rupa is on mute. Very good. Thank you, Allison and Anita. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Jindal, Senior Director of Engineering at VMware. Today, I would like to introduce Mamta Maiter, IT Director in Enterprise Apps, and Rebecca Tom, Senior Director of Licensing Sales Operations from Dolby Laboratories. They will share their experiences on how they engage employees and deepen connections across different work dimensions in the virtual world. Their desired outcome is that you are able to take and apply some of these ideas in your own organizations to strengthen employee satisfaction and belonging. Please help me in welcoming Mamta and Rebecca.
All right. Thank you for that great introduction, Anita. Hello, everyone. Rebecca and I are so excited to welcome you all to our session, Catalyzing Change to Create Cohesive Communities and Alliteration. Before we begin, I want to clarify our roles. We are not representing Dolby as a whole, and we are not in HR. Rather, we are both involved in Dolby's various employee networks. And here we are sharing our own personal experiences as engaged employees. We would now like to present our material to you in a modified Pecha Kucha style. For those of you who may not know this, Pecha Kucha means the sound of conversation in Japanese. So Rebecca and I will do some storytelling through lots and lots of pictures. By the way, just a reminder, I think we've been through enough of these sessions already, but just as a reminder for those of you who may just be dialing into this session, as we go through our presentation, please type your questions and thoughts in the chat, and our wonderful moderator, Anita, will help us collate that for our Q&A at the end. Okay, so today is May the 4th. It's Star Wars Day. Dolby and Star Wars have a rich, thick history. May the 4th be with you is an evolution of May the Force be with you. This phrase is used to wish good luck. So WT2 ladies, thumbs up. So when you see these pictures, what do they convey? What comes to mind? I guess we can all agree that we see hope, new opportunity, survival instinct, making the best of situation. I'd really encourage you all to put in your thoughts in chat as well as to what these pictures convey to you. We have heard enough. We know the theme of our conference is resilience. We heard during one of our lightning talks from the two Sarahs who mentioned that they actually collect the definitions for resilience. This is in no way exhaustive, but resilience is nothing but the ability to quickly come up from difficult situations and spring back into action. Rather, I like what they said about bounce forward rather than bounce back. So I'm going to adopt that and say rather spring forward into action. These are all the words that go well with adapting and adapting solidly in the face of adversity, agility, adaptability, endurance, empowerment, strength, and so on. We entered 2020 with a perfect vision. But soon it got so blurry with the challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic to racial injustice and a wide range of other issues, too many to name. So we took the challenges that we faced and we turned them into new opportunities. In other words, we turned a setback into a comeback. So through our presentation, we'll showcase how Dolby Laboratories has created various programs to support employees and create these cohesive communities. We will highlight some of the catalysts that can help trigger positive reactions and deeper engagement from employees. I will now turn it over to Rebecca, who will share some insights on what has worked well for us in this journey. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Mamta. In 2017, Dolby started with 5 employee networks to really amplify the work that our diversity and inclusion team was doing. Today, as you can see on the screen, we have many more. We have 13 employee networks and regional inclusion networks. What I'd like to do is spend the next many slides covering some of the events that these different organizations, different network groups have hosted for employees. PAX, or our Pan-Asian Experience Group, always does a Diwali celebration each year. In non-COVID years, it's a very visual experience with a historical skit about Diwali, there are beautiful saris, there are henna stations, a wonderful Indian dancing, great food. As you can imagine, that was not possible during the pandemic. And so what happened is the PAX team really had to get inventive for the Diwali celebration. And what they did is they had an at-home cooking competition, and they also had a Bhangra dance class. And you can see from these pictures, I think that people seem to have a pretty good time doing that dance class, even though it was virtual. PAX also has a annual Lunar New Year celebration. And again, when we were all in the office, that afforded us the opportunity to do various things. They often would have a chopsticks competition. There was a calligraphy station one year. There was great food, and we actually had a wonderful traditional lion dance, and one of the PAX members is actually in the lion dance team, so that was quite a treat. Clearly, that was not possible in 2021. So the PAX group, they pivoted, and instead they had several events online, including a curated viewing of a select objects of art from the San Francisco Asian Art Museum. And they also had a boba making party and a Lunar New Year trivia contest, where they actually sent out, these are some of the examples, various trivia from different Asian cultures. They sent this out in advance to employees so that people could become familiar with these various Asian cultures. We stands for Women's Empowerment. And this is Dolby's Women's Employee Network, of which I'm a co-lead. And, you know, in the absence of in-person events, we've also pivoted. And in 2020 and 2021, we've hosted several virtual events. We also launched our mentorship program, which we've been wanting to do for a while. And this is a screenshot from one of those mentorship groups. And the way we've organized it is that one mentor will be paired with 4 to 6 mentees. And so it's more of a leverage mentoring model. They meet once a month and they discuss both personal and professional development topics. And we put a lot of effort into creating these groups because we had them take the VARC learning questionnaire that talks about their preferred learning style. We matched people up with their mentor. And then we also had both mentors and mentees sign a mentorship agreement. So if you are interested in finding out more information about setting up your own program, I'd be happy to answer those questions. And we actually have a Whova meetup session directly after this presentation. If you're interested in joining us, just go to the Whova platform and go in communities and meet up. We also did an event in March for International Women's Day, in which Poppy Crum, who is our chief scientist at Dolby, talked about how to prevent bias in technology design. I'll give you a spoiler alert. The first step is actually being aware that it actually exists. And secondly, including women and people of color in your technology design efforts. Obsidian is our Black employee network, and they partnered with community relations in 2020 to create an awareness campaign and a fundraising campaign so that employees were able to donate to various organizations such as the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund and the Black Lives Matter Foundation, organizations that are fighting systemic racism. In addition to that, there was a corporate-wide listening event in which many, I believe we had over 100 employees participating in that event. Mundo, which is our Latinx employee network, partnered with the Variety Boys and Girls Club down in Southern California for a virtual career panel and mixer. And the way this was set up is that 2 Dolby employees would be partnered with 4 to 5 Boys and Girls Club members. And those members would ask questions of the Dolby employees about how they actually got to where they are in their career and what were the steps they followed to reach that path, to take that path. This is another event that Mundo hosted, and it was really an awesome event. This is Maria Hinojosa, who is the executive producer and the anchor of Latino USA on NPR. She's also an award-winning author and journalist. I attended this event, and I'll tell you, it was wonderful. And some events are just about being fun and being creative. This particular event that Mundo hosted involved people, developing their own spin on tacos and sharing photos and recipes over our internal communication channels. This picture is for Dolby Care Week and Dolby Cares Week. And in April of this year, over 800 Dolby employees and contractors participated in our very first virtual Dolby Cares event. And this was through learning, volunteering, giving, and taking action. Projects ranged from providing feedback on student short films, doing mock interviews and career conversations, writing uplifting cards to community members who are fighting isolation, cleaning up local neighborhoods, and learning about community issues. I'm sure you can imagine that the left side of the screen is this year's event. The previous picture is from a previous year. We were not all together this year. Our diversity, inclusion, and belonging team also innovated how we continue highlighting our diversity and increase our inclusion and belonging in a virtual world. In March 2020, they created Dolby's first global platform for employee connection called Dolby Anywhere. And since that time, they have hosted over 90 virtual coffee breaks, and over 40% of Dolby employees have attended these events, and some of them engage very regularly in the Dolby Together platform. These virtual coffee breaks can really take a range of different topics. They cover a range of different topics. Could be anything from, productivity training, how to be productive at home, anti-racism workshops, well-being at home, even to a live virtual farm visit with our sustainability team for Earth Day. I think you can see here that we really had a great time networking with Argyle and Gizmo in our GOAT 2 meeting. And since during the pandemic, so many kids are at home, the virtual coffee breaks often will take a bend towards the family, such as this healthy eating with kids, where Chef Ross did a demonstration of how you can prepare and make a healthy meal that kids will actually eat. And now I'd like to pass the baton back over to Mamtha so she can talk to us about how we can really optimize working from home.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. So let me kick it off with this little quiz. We all know WFH, working from home, but how many of us know the law? LAW stands for living at work. Before COVID-19, once in a while, I work from home, and it meant the luxury of being able to sleep in a bit, skip the morning commute, spend a quiet day working from the comfort of my own home. Now that remote work has become a norm for most of us, I think we all agree that we need to make some lifestyle changes. One big miss of working from home is the social interaction time between team members. Here is a wonderful African proverb that highlights the importance of working together. If you want to go fast, meaning if you want to sprint, you go alone. But if you want to go far or run a marathon, go together. We at Dolby organized several team building activities, which I'm sure is the case with many of your companies as well. Here is an example of Rebecca participating in an international cooking challenge. This challenge was actually to cook a dish that doesn't come from where you live or your heritage. This is an Audubon activity where my team built these beautiful bird houses for winged visitors. Just providing you some examples here. These are some stills grabbed from a video compilation where people showed how they spent time during the pandemic nourishing their hobbies, be it from creating art, playing music, restoring cars. Now that's a bit unique. Spending time with families, honing culinary skills, or strengthening their bodies through yoga, walking our dogs, or even relaxing with them. At the corporate level, Dolby created a strong challenge with a four-pronged approach. On the community side, they helped connect employees across the globe to experience other communities. So basically, it's an opportunity to reflect on similarities and differences. On the environment side, the company empowered employees to interact with their surroundings in a more meaningful way. How can we be stewards of the environment in this unique time? Encouraging employees to experience the benefits of movement by linking employees within their region to share their physical well-being and discover how movement actually matters. Lastly, virtual volunteerism, where participants can raise money for every eligible hour in rewards that can be donated for eligible causes. Now, let me go a little deeper into the fitness side of things. When we hear fitness, it's usually the physical fitness that comes out very vividly, but we should also consider mental fitness. Physical health contributes to mental health. The two go hand in hand. This is a picture of our well-being week. You can see what it looks like. Such programs are meant to be holistic, and they are meant to deepen the employee connections. You can all see that there are several classes and sessions that have been so meticulously planned by these groups. We have yoga sessions, sessions where they taught employees on how to be mindful, how to improve productivity and boost employee productivity, how to manage finances, etc. With well-being in mind, Dolby also came up with this movement map. So the flow chart on the left, which is hard to read, breaks down into some simpler steps. Starts with a well-organized home office, nutrition, hydration, fitness or mobility, sleep, and last but not least, tracking. We've all heard what gets measured gets managed. So we are taught to log food, workout routine, sleep schedule, etc. Here, I just want to talk briefly about overcoming barriers to exercise. Everything that one needs to succeed is actually in our head. We just need to understand that thoughts and feelings can influence our ability to raise to a challenge. We had a very informative session where we learned that all of us have the same 5 barriers. It's time, support, energy, skill, and information. Let me now transition to talk about recovery stretches. Most of us have desk jobs, and we all know how we can get engulfed with work and spend hours without leaving our chairs. Well, we should knowingly insert some breaks in between. When we used to be at work, such breaks were pretty implicit. Here is an example of some of our Dolby team members doing their seated cervical rotation. Like I said, what was very implicit before, now we have to explicitly take an extra effort to make sure we insert those micro breaks. Now I'm going to switch gears and transition into the ergonomics part of things. Ergonomics is nothing but maintaining our efficiency in our own working environment. It is the scientific discipline concerned with fitting the job or the task to the worker. So to the right here, you see a picture of ergonomic evolution. Biologically, our human body has been the same for tens of thousands of years. While our civilization has gone past the hunting-gathering phase, our biological adaptation has really not caught up. This creates quite a bit mismatch between our biological and cultural requirements. So it's very important that we have workplace design in mind, which is aimed to promote intuitive function and teamwork. Here are some tips for improvising our home office. Yes, these are all the different locations that we all work from home. When we all work from home, these are the places or locations that we work from. So it's important to change postures and the work location often. We may not always have a desk and a chair. So if you're working on the couch or on the bed, please use a cushion behind your back for extra support. These are all not my tips. I'm just sharing the tips that we were taught. Take frequent micro breaks, as we talked about, to move around and stretch. So I want to spend a few minutes to talk about employee enrichment. When 100% of our employees for most companies are working from home, how can you keep them engaged? You're interested? Well, you can appeal to another of their dimensions and provide enrichment opportunities. This segment highlights how employers can implement more people-centered employee engagement approach. Dolby has implemented several programs to bring more meaningful experiences to employees. Dolby at Home is a virtual global program designed to bring a variety of entertainment, music, arts, cultural events, and experiences directly to not just employees, but also their families. It's important to be inclusive. This is an example of a virtual cooking event hosted by a famous chef in India, Geetanjali Advani. We all made a piping hot biryani with some chilled raita and a dessert, which was Shahi Tukra. I guess some of you who may not have eaten lunch are probably feeling a little hungry. Monterey Bay Aquarium. So recently, Dolby at Home showcased a virtual tour of Monterey Bay Aquarium. Employees and the families got an opportunity to learn about marine creatures, their habitats, and we received a behind the scenes tour, which was just fabulous. I've visited Monterey Bay Aquarium several times with my children, but I'd never seen what it is behind the scenes. We also learned about their sustainability practices in partnership with Dolby's sustainability program. There was another segment on festivals of India. Employees learned about the cultural significance of Holi, which is the festival of colors, and Diwali or Deepavali, which is the festival of lights. As you can see through all the different slides that I've walked you through, employees can work together to curate content to bring virtual events to life. I would now like to hand it back to Rebecca, who will take us through other employee enrichment activities.
Thank you, Mamta. Dolby at Home also hosted singer-songwriters Dawn Cat and Fire Maid in a virtual concert. And I can tell you, as a fan of live music, this was really a very nice change during the pandemic. And a family favorite was when Kevin Blake, who is a San Francisco-based magician, performed virtually and interactively with families that were dialed into the event. And this was by far, I think, the favorite for the kids through the whole Dolby at Home series. And one of my favorites was probably the first Dolby at Home event, which featured Frida Kahlo, Appearances Can Be Deceiving, this exhibit where the co-curator of this exhibit from the De Young Museum in San Francisco came virtually, participated virtually, so that we could actually get a sneak peek into the exhibit. And we were able to experience Frida Kahlo's, some of her artwork, some information about her life and background information, also to be able to see some of her jewelry and clothing as well. During the pandemic, we also launched a new perspective speaker series. And the first speaker in that series was Rana El Kaloubi, who's the author of Girl Decoded. And she's also the CEO of Affectiva. This was really a wonderful and very inspiring event, especially from a women in STEM perspective. One of the other speakers who was featured in that speaker series is Margaret Heffernan, who is a professor, a futurist, an author, and has been a CEO of 5 different companies. And she really spoke to us about the future and how companies can react, which I think is a very relevant topic anytime, and especially where we are right now. So what does our future hold for us? Work life for many will never be the same as it was pre-pandemic. And the world has really changed around us. That is not lost on employers. I want to share some stats with you. A Gallup survey showed that 44% of workers want to continue working remotely once restrictions are lifted. And only 39% want to return to the office. A live career survey showed that 29% of working professionals say they would quit their jobs if they couldn't continue to work remotely. Specifically in the Bay Area, workers were surveyed about where they wanted to work, either at home, in the office, and what that balance should really look like. They said they would ideally work from home 1 to 2 days a week. 26% said they would ideally work from home 1 to 2 days a week. 18% said 3 to 4 days at home. 44% said 0 days at home. And 12% said they would like to work at home all 5 days. So I think it is clear, based on employee feedback, that employees are going to be spending a much larger percentage of time working from home than they did pre-pandemic, even after all of the restrictions are over. And because of that, it is really imperative that companies continue to provide and enable enriching and engaging experiences for employees. Mamta and I would like to thank you for attending our event. We really hope that we planted some seeds for some ideas of events that you can go and implement within your own company. We actually wanted to leave you with a key takeaways flyer that we created based on learnings that we've had at Dolby. And this is actually available to you for download in the handout section. If you go to this session in Whova and you click on this session and you go down in the handouts, you'll just be able to download this. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions right now in the Q&A. And we'd also like to invite you to join us right after this session in the meetup section of Whova. So if you go into communities and then you go into meetups and virtual events, we'll be having a meetup for 30 minutes so that you could ask any questions or share any events that you've done. We'd like to learn from you as well. So once again, thank you very much. And we are happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Rebecca and Mamta. Thank you for such a great talk. Actually, we are out of time for questions right now. We went over. So I would suggest that we continue this dialogue in the meetup section that you have created. Thank you for such an inspiring talk, and thank you for sharing all the great tips for people as they work in this virtual environment.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Join us in the meetup, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.